Case 1. Russel and Shirley Dermond. A piece of fabric sat in an evidence locker for nearly 10 years before a lab technician extracted something investigators had been waiting a decade to find: touch DNA from an unidentified person. That single result, confirmed in 2024, became the strongest lead in one of Georgia's longest-running unsolved homicide cases. Welcome to the Predator's Archive. Before we begin, if you want more investigations like this one, tap that subscribe button, leave a comment with your thoughts, and give this video a like so more people can see it. Now, let's get into the file. Russel Dermond was 88 years old. His wife Shirley was 87. They had been married for 68 years and lived in the gated Great Waters community on Lake Oconee in Putnam County, Georgia, roughly 60 miles southeast of Atlanta. Investigators believe the couple died sometime between Friday, May 2nd and Monday, May 5th, 2014. On Tuesday, May 6th, neighbors grew concerned. The Dermonds had been expected at a Kentucky Derby gathering and had not shown up, and repeated phone calls went unanswered. A neighbor entered the home through an unlocked door and found Russel Dermond deceased in the couple's garage. Shirley was not in the house. She was missing for 10 days. On May 16, 2014, fishermen located her body in Lake Oconee, roughly 5 miles by boat from the family home. According to case summaries published by Wikipedia and reporting by the Macon Telegraph, an autopsy determined the cause of death was blunt force trauma. The lead agency on the case has been the Putnam County Sheriff's Office, under Sheriff Howard Sills, working alongside the Federal Bureau of Investigation. FBI Special Agent Andy Smith remained assigned to the case for approximately 9 years, according to reporting by Atlanta's 11 Alive news station. For years, the case had no forensic breakthrough. That changed in February 2024, when Sheriff Sills personally delivered evidence to forensic laboratories for renewed testing. Uthram Labs, based in the Woodlands, Texas, referred the evidence to Sorensen Forensics in Utah for advanced analysis. According to reporting by Joe Kovac Jr. of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution in April 2024, Sorensen's laboratory reported that a piece of Russel Dermond's clothing carried touch DNA belonging to an individual who has not been identified. Sheriff Sills described it as the most significant evidence developed in the 10 years since the investigation began. Investigators have also referenced cell phone data as part of the ongoing case file. In 2024, the FBI added $20,000 to the existing reward fund. Sheriff Sills has told CBS affiliate WGCL that investigators identified a person of interest early in the case, someone who was interviewed but whose account did not hold up to scrutiny. FBI agent Smith has stated publicly that he believes more than one person was involved in the deaths. No arrests have been made, and no one has been formally charged. As of 2026, the case remains open and under active investigation. On the 10th anniversary of the deaths, in May 2024, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution published an extensive feature revisiting the case, and reward funds have continued to grow. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Putnam County Sheriff's Office. What makes this case distinct within cold case investigation is the role of modern forensic genealogy laboratories in reopening decade-old physical evidence. Touch DNA analysis, the ability to extract genetic material from cells left behind through simple contact with fabric, did not exist in a practical, widely used form when the Dermonds died in 2014. By the time Sheriff Sills sought renewed testing in 2024, the technology had advanced enough to identify genetic material that earlier analysis methods could not detect. This illustrates a pattern seen across multiple cold cases nationally. Evidence collected at the time of a crime, when properly preserved, can become newly useful years or even decades later as forensic science develops. The Putnam County Sheriff's Office has continued to treat this as an active case rather than a closed file. Investigators have periodically released updates to local media, a practice used in many long-term unsolved investigations to keep public attention on a case and encourage new tips. The consistent presence of FBI involvement, alongside the local sheriff's department, reflects the case's classification as a matter of both local and federal interest, given the scale of resources devoted to it over nearly a decade. The reward fund associated with this case has grown over time through contributions from multiple sources, including federal funds added in 2024. Reward increases are a common investigative tool used to generate new information in cases where initial leads have not produced an arrest. Law enforcement agencies frequently revisit reward amounts on case anniversaries, using media coverage tied to those anniversaries to renew public awareness. Sheriff Sill's public statements about a person of interest illustrate a distinction often made in ongoing investigations between having a suspect and having sufficient evidence to support criminal charges. Investigators may develop strong suspicions about an individual's involvement without possessing evidence that meets the legal threshold required for prosecution. This distinction is central to understanding why many cold cases remain unresolved even when investigators have specific individuals in mind. Probable cause for an arrest requires evidence sufficient to convince a court, not simply investigative belief. Agent Smith's statement that more than one person may have been involved introduces the possibility that this case involves multiple parties, which can complicate an investigation considerably. Cases involving multiple participants often depend on one individual providing information about others, whether through plea negotiations, cooperation agreements, or simply a change in willingness to speak to investigators over time. Long-running cold cases sometimes see breakthroughs not from new physical evidence but from a witness or participant who eventually comes forward. The recovery of Shirley Dermond's body 10 days after her husband was found also speaks to logistical challenges in this specific case. Lake Oconee is a large reservoir, and locating a body within it required either search efforts or, as occurred here, discovery by members of the public, in this instance fishermen. This kind of delayed discovery is not unusual in cases involving bodies of water, and it can affect the forensic information available at autopsy, since time elapsed before recovery influences what evidence can still be gathered. Because the case remains open, investigators have been measured in what they release publicly. Details about the touch DNA profile, including whether it has been run against national or international databases such as CODIS, the FBI's combined DNA index system, have not been fully disclosed in public reporting. This is standard practice in active investigations, where agencies limit information release to protect the integrity of the case and avoid alerting any potential suspect to the specifics of what evidence exists. For documentary and educational purposes, the Dermond case serves as an example of how forensic science continues to evolve after an investigation formally goes cold. The techniques used in 2024 were not novel concepts invented that year. Touch DNA analysis has existed in various forms since the early 2000s, but improvements in extraction and processing methods, along with the involvement of specialized private laboratories like Othram and Sorensen, allowed investigators to recover usable genetic information from evidence that earlier testing had not been able to fully analyze. As of this recording, the case remains classified as open by the Putnam County Sheriff's Office. No suspect has been named publicly, no arrest has been made, and the identity of the individual whose DNA was recovered from Russel Dermond's clothing has not been confirmed through any public announcement. Investigators continue to encourage anyone with information, however minor it may seem, to contact the Sheriff's Office directly. Case 2. The Chen family. Investigators called it the largest mass killing in the history of Albany County, New York. 4 members of one family found dead inside their own home, with no sign that anyone had forced their way in. Jinfeng Chen was 39 years old and worked at a nearby Chinese restaurant. His wife, Haiyan Li, was 38. Their 2 sons, Anthony and Eddie, were 10 and 7 years old. The family lived on Western Avenue, also known as US Route 20, in Guilderland, New York. All 4 died in the early morning hours of Wednesday, October 8, 2014. Autopsy findings placed the time of death between approximately 3:30 and 6:30 that morning. The family was discovered around midday on October 8th, when a co-worker of Jin Chen's grew concerned after Chen failed to arrive at the restaurant for his shift. Because of a language barrier, a Chinese-speaking relative placed the call to 911. Investigators found Jin Chen's body on the first floor of the home. His wife and 2 sons were found upstairs. There were no signs of forced entry anywhere in the residence. The Guilderland Police Department, then led by Chief Carol Lawler, was the first agency to respond. Given the scale of the case, the New York State Police, specifically the Troop G Major Crimes Unit based at New Scotland, became the lead continuing investigative agency. The case also drew assistance from the New York Police Department, which pursued leads in Manhattan's Chinatown community, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the United States Department of State, which coordinated outreach to law enforcement agencies in Chicago, Los Angeles, Montreal, and China. According to investigators, the deaths involved both a bladed weapon and a blunt object. Forensic teams collected DNA and other physical evidence at the scene, but as of 2026, none of it has been matched to a known suspect. Investigators have cited several obstacles that complicated the case from its earliest days. There were no nearby security cameras to capture activity around the home. According to Albany County District Attorney David Soares, Apple's initial refusal to release records from the family's iPhone set the investigation back significantly before the company's policies later changed. Language and cultural barriers also played a role, since many potential witnesses in the community primarily spoke the Fujianese, or Min, dialect rather than English or Mandarin. The Times-Union additionally reported that investigators found a substantial number of mattresses in the home's basement, a detail cited in connection with one investigative theory involving labor or trafficking arrangements. Investigators have publicly discussed several theories regarding motive, none of which have been confirmed. These have included the possibility of an organized crime connection, sometimes described in reporting as an underworld dispute, the possibility that the case was connected to human trafficking involving undocumented restaurant workers from the Fujian region of China, the possibility of a dispute connected to illegal gambling debts, and the possibility of a money laundering scheme. Chen's brother has publicly disputed the suggestion that high-stakes gambling was involved. Investigators also examined a separate, similar case from 2011 in which a Chinese restaurant family was killed in D'Iberville, Mississippi, to determine whether any connection existed between the two. No person of interest has ever been publicly named in the Chen family case. There have been no arrests and no court proceedings of any kind. The case remains, in the fullest sense, unsolved. As of 2026, the investigation remains open and active. On the 10th anniversary of the deaths, in October 2024, both the New York State Police and the Guilderland Police Department issued renewed public appeals for information, covered by outlets including News 10, CBS 6 Albany, and the Daily Voice. In earlier reporting from October 2015, the Altamont Enterprise quoted New York State Police Bureau of Criminal Investigation Captain Scott Coburn, who told a public forum in Guilderland that over 600 leads had been followed by that point, but acknowledged that for a case of this magnitude, that number was comparatively low. Investigators have said they believe it is possible the person or people responsible left the country following the killings. A $5,000 reward has been offered by the family, and a matching $5,000 reward was offered separately by Victory Christian Church under Pastor Charlie Muller. Anyone with information is asked to contact the New York State Police or the Guilderland Police Department. Chief Carol Lawler said publicly in the aftermath of the case that she had never encountered anything comparable in her career. District Attorney David Soares said in October 2015 that he believed someone in the community held the answer to what happened and that the central problem was that this person had not yet come forward. The Chen family case illustrates several recurring challenges in homicide investigations involving immigrant communities. Language barriers are not simply a matter of translation difficulty. They can affect an investigator's ability to build trust with witnesses who may fear law enforcement due to prior experiences, immigration status concerns, or unfamiliarity with the American legal system. In this case, investigators had to rely on interpreters and community liaisons to conduct interviews, which can slow an investigation considerably compared to cases where witnesses and detectives share a common language. The dispute over access to digital records also highlights an issue that became increasingly significant to law enforcement throughout the 2010s. The tension between technology companies' data privacy policies and investigators' need for digital evidence in criminal cases. At the time of the Chen family killings, encryption and access policies for smartphones were less standardized across the industry than they are today, and disputes like the one described by District Attorney Soares became a recurring theme in major criminal investigations during that period. The absence of forced entry remains one of the most significant investigative details in this case. It suggests, though does not confirm, that whoever entered the home may have been known to the family or gained entry through some means other than force, a detail that shaped several of the investigative theories pursued by New York State Police, including the organized crime and trafficking theories tied to the restaurant industry in which Chen worked. The examination of the 2011 case in D'Iberville, Mississippi, demonstrates a common investigative practice, cross-referencing unsolved or solved cases with similar characteristics, in this instance, restaurant industry families targeted in their own homes, to determine whether a pattern exists that might connect multiple crimes to the same individual or group. Ultimately, no confirmed connection between the two cases has been publicly established. As of this recording, the investigation into the deaths of Jinfeng Chen, Haiyan Li, Anthony Chen, and Eddie Chen remains open. New York State Police and the Guilderland Police Department continue to accept tips through their respective public contact lines, and investigators have indicated that the case remains a priority more than a decade after the family was found. Case 3. Johntavious Swift. A 16-year-old told his great-grandmother he had a bad feeling about his bus stop. Hours later, on that same stretch of road, he was shot as he walked home from school. Johntavious J.T. Swift was 16 years old, a junior at Burke High School in Omaha, Nebraska. He was shot on Wednesday, September 24, 2014, in the northeast section of the city. Contemporaneous reporting by the Omaha World-Herald placed the shooting near North Ridge Drive and North 39th Street, after Swift got off a bus near 34th Street. The Omaha Police Department's cold case page describes the location somewhat differently, as the area of 36th Street and Forest Lawn Avenue. This is a minor but notable discrepancy between the two sources. According to the Omaha Police Department, Swift got off a school bus and began walking toward home when a vehicle approached and a person exited the vehicle and fired multiple shots. A neighbor who spoke to the Omaha World-Herald on condition of anonymity described the circumstances as an ambush, stating that Swift attempted to run as the shooting occurred. That same neighbor said she applied direct pressure to his injury while waiting for emergency responders to arrive. Swift was transported to Creighton University Medical Center, where he later died from his injuries. Witnesses who were present gave accounts of the incident that did not fully align with one another. The Omaha Police Department led the investigation. Swift's death occurred during a day marked by an unusually high level of gun violence in northeast Omaha, with 4 other individuals shot in separate incidents that same day. Swift's great-grandmother, Shirley Jones, told reporters afterward that he had expressed to her a sense of unease about the location of his bus stop prior to the shooting. As of 2026, this case remains listed as an open cold case by the Omaha Police Department's Cold Case Homicide Unit. Tips can be submitted by email or by phone directly to the unit. However, per the Omaha Police Department's published guidance, individuals seeking eligibility for the $25,000 reward associated with the case must contact Omaha Crime Stoppers directly, rather than the police department, in order to qualify. No suspect has been publicly named, and no arrests have been made. The Swift case reflects a pattern seen in many unsolved shootings involving inconsistent or conflicting eyewitness accounts. When multiple witnesses are present at a shooting, particularly one that unfolds quickly and in the dark or in a chaotic setting, their recollections of key details, the number of people involved, the sequence of events, or descriptions of a vehicle or suspect often vary. This variation does not necessarily indicate dishonesty on the part of witnesses. It reflects well-documented limitations in human memory and perception under stress, a phenomenon that has been studied extensively within forensic psychology and is a recognized challenge for homicide investigators working shooting cases with multiple bystanders. The discrepancy between the Omaha World-Herald's description of the shooting's location and the Omaha Police Department's own cold case page is also worth noting from an investigative documentation standpoint. Differences of this kind can arise from several sources: initial reporting based on early information from responding officers, subsequent adjustments as investigators refine the timeline and geography of an incident, or simple inconsistency between how different institutions record and describe events. For documentary purposes, this discrepancy is presented as a factual note rather than a suggestion that either source is inaccurate. The requirement that tipsters contact Omaha Crime Stoppers separately from the police department in order to be eligible for a reward reflects a common structure used across many U.S. jurisdictions. Crime Stoppers organizations typically operate independently of police departments, specifically so that tipsters can provide information anonymously, without direct contact with law enforcement, which can encourage individuals who might otherwise be reluctant to come forward due to concerns about retaliation or involvement in a criminal matter themselves. The broader context of the day Swift was killed, one in which multiple shootings occurred in the same area of the city, is relevant to how the case has been investigated and understood. Law enforcement agencies analyzing cases like this often look for possible connections between multiple incidents occurring in close geographic and temporal proximity, though no public reporting has confirmed a connection between Swift's death and the other shootings that occurred that day in northeast Omaha. As of this recording, the Omaha Police Department continues to list Swift's case among its active cold case files. Investigators have not released additional forensic details publicly, and no person of interest has been identified in available reporting. The case remains a point of ongoing appeal by both the police department and Swift's surviving family members. Case 4. Trevor Baldwin Police in Chesapeake, Virginia, arrived expecting to investigate a routine traffic accident. What they found instead was a homicide made to look like one. Trevor Baldwin was 20 years old. He was shot on Tuesday, September 30, 2014, at approximately 9 p.m. on Dunedin Drive near Tasman Court, in the Western Branch section of Chesapeake, Virginia. Officers initially responded to a report of a single vehicle accident. Baldwin's silver 1996 Buick had left the roadway and struck a tree in Dunedin Park. When officers arrived, they found Baldwin in the driver's seat, having sustained a gunshot injury. He was pronounced dead at the scene. According to the Chesapeake Police Department's case file, Baldwin had crashed the vehicle after being shot, meaning the collision was a consequence of the shooting rather than its cause. The Chesapeake Police Department has led the investigation, which is filed under case number 2014-64138. Baldwin's mother, Melinda Baldwin, told local news outlets WTKR and Wavy that her son was shot once, at close range, with the injury passing through his arm and into his chest. The family has stated publicly that they believe Trevor was lured into what was intended to be a robbery and that the encounter ended in his death. Chesapeake Police told Wavy News in 2019 that they believe they know the identity of the individual responsible for the shooting, but have not confirmed a name publicly, citing the sensitivity of an active investigation and concerns about pretrial publicity affecting a future prosecution. Baldwin's family has stated that a suspect's name circulated within the community within a day of the shooting. No arrest has been made. Police have cited the retirement of the original lead detective, along with a subsequent restructuring of the department's cold case unit, as contributing factors in the case's lack of resolution. As of 2026, Baldwin's case remains listed as an unsolved homicide by both the City of Chesapeake and the Virginia State Police cold case databases. The city has listed a reward of up to $1,500, while Baldwin's family has separately offered an $8,000 reward. The City of Chesapeake produced a cold case homicide video series, and episode number 10 of that series profiles Baldwin's case specifically. The Baldwin case illustrates a recurring tension in unsolved homicide investigations: the gap between an investigator's working belief about who committed a crime and the legal standard required to bring formal charges. Chesapeake Police's public acknowledgement that they believe they know the shooter's identity without releasing that name reflects a standard practice in which law enforcement agencies withhold suspect information until they are prepared to pursue formal charges, in part to preserve the fairness of a future trial and to avoid compromising the case through premature publicity. This case also demonstrates how organizational changes within a police department can affect the pace of a cold case investigation. The retirement of a lead detective often means the transfer of case knowledge, notes, and investigative instincts to a new detective who must review the entire file from the beginning. Departmental restructuring of cold case units, which has occurred in many jurisdictions nationally as departments adjust staffing and budget priorities, can similarly slow the pace at which older cases receive dedicated attention, even when the case itself remains formally open. The discrepancy between the reward amount offered by the city and the considerably larger reward offered independently by Baldwin's family reflects a common pattern in cold cases that receive limited movement through official channels. Families often supplement smaller municipal reward funds with their own resources in an effort to generate new tips, particularly in cases where they believe the responsible party is known within the community but has not been formally identified through the legal process. The city's decision to produce a dedicated video segment on Baldwin's case, as part of a broader cold case homicide series, reflects an increasingly common public information strategy used by police departments and municipalities, using accessible video content to keep unsolved cases visible to the public well beyond the initial period of news coverage following a crime. These kinds of ongoing public awareness efforts are often credited, in cold case literature more broadly, with occasionally generating renewed tips years after a crime, particularly as personal relationships and community loyalties shift with time. As of this recording, the investigation into Trevor Baldwin's death remains open. The Chesapeake Police Department has not announced any change in the case's status, and no arrest has been made in the more than a decade since the shooting occurred. Case 5. Michael Marquez. San Francisco police recovered the weapon used in this killing 9 months after it happened, and it still didn't lead them to a suspect. Michael Marquez was 22 years old. He was shot at approximately 12:30 a.m. on Monday, November 24, 2014, near the intersection of Henry and Noe Streets in the Duboce Triangle neighborhood of San Francisco, California. According to police accounts, Marquez had eaten dinner with friends in the West Portal neighborhood earlier that evening, dropped off his girlfriend, and was walking home with 2 friends when a group of men emerged from a dark-colored sedan and attempted to rob them at gunpoint. Reports vary on the exact number of individuals involved. The San Francisco Police Department's cold case page and several news reports described 4 suspects, while early reporting described 5, and a report from the outlet Hoodline described 3. A warning shot was fired, and Marquez ran eastbound on Henry Street, at which point he was shot in the torso. The individuals responsible took a smartphone, a wallet, and a backpack before fleeing the scene. Marquez was transported toward San Francisco General Hospital, but died before arrival. The San Francisco Police Department's homicide detail has led the investigation. Approximately 9 months after the shooting, investigators recovered the firearm believed to have been used in the crime, but determined that it had been reported stolen and that its recovery did not produce any leads toward identifying a suspect. As of 2026, this remains an open cold case. The San Francisco Police Department and Marquez's parents, Ramon and Patricia Marquez, have continued to make public appeals for information. The reward associated with the case has grown over time. It was reported at $125,000 by KTVU in 2023. According to the San Francisco Police Department's cold case page, the department has since authorized a reward of $175,000 for information leading to the identification, arrest, and conviction of the individual or individuals responsible. A December 2025 report from the outlet Crime Voice noted that the Marquez case is one of 2 San Francisco Police Department cases, each carrying a reward of that amount. Tips can be submitted anonymously to the San Francisco Police Department by phone or by text. No suspect has been publicly named. The Marquez case highlights a specific investigative challenge common to robbery-related shootings. The recovery of a weapon does not guarantee the identification of a suspect, particularly when that weapon has changed hands multiple times prior to its use in a crime. Firearms that have been reported stolen often pass through several individuals before being used in an unrelated offense, which can create a substantial gap between the weapon's original owner and the person who ultimately used it. This is a well-documented complication in firearms tracing investigations nationally, and it applies directly to the Marquez case, where the weapon's recovery, while significant, ultimately did not produce a new lead toward a suspect. The conflicting witness accounts regarding the number of individuals involved in the robbery attempt are also relevant from an investigative standpoint. As in cases involving multiple witnesses under high-stress conditions, discrepancies in the reported number of suspects are common and do not necessarily undermine the reliability of witness testimony as a whole. They reflect the well-established limitations of eyewitness perception during fast-moving, threatening situations, particularly at night. The substantial growth of the reward fund in this case, from $125,000 to $175,000 over a period of roughly 2 years, reflects an increasingly common practice among municipal police departments handling long unsolved cases, periodically increasing reward amounts, particularly around anniversaries or renewed media coverage, in an effort to prompt individuals who may have relevant information to come forward after a period of silence. As of this recording, the investigation into Michael Marquez's death remains active. The San Francisco Police Department continues to list the case among its highest value cold case rewards, and Marquez's parents continue to participate in public efforts to generate new information more than a decade after his death. Case 6. Glenda Marisol Coca-Romero. 3 men entered a small grocery store, remained inside for less than 20 seconds, and were gone before anyone could react. In that time, 1 employee lost her life. Glenda Marisol Coca-Romero was 21 years old. She worked as a clerk at a grocery store and was the mother of a daughter who was 9 months old at the time. She was killed on February 21, 2014, at the Platinillo's grocery and jewelry store on U.S. Route 1 in Woodbridge, Virginia. According to police accounts, 3 men dressed in dark clothing, with their faces covered, approached the store counter and opened fire. Coca-Romero was killed, and a second employee, a 42-year-old store clerk, was injured. Prince William County Police First Sergeant Jonathan Perroque told the outlet Potomac Local that the 3 men were inside the store for less than 20 seconds before shooting both victims and immediately leaving. A customer who was at the counter at the time, along with another employee present in the store, were not harmed. The Prince William County Police Department led the investigation, working in partnership with the FBI's Washington field office. Investigators used a billboard placed along U.S. Route 1 to solicit tips from the public. As of 2026, the individuals responsible have never been identified, and the case remains open. According to the FBI's Washington field office, the agency has offered a reward of up to $20,000 for information leading to the arrest of the person or persons responsible. That reward was raised to its current amount on February 20, 2015, with an additional reward of up to $1,000 available through Prince William County Crime Solvers. Tips can be submitted to Prince William County Police or through the FBI's public tip portal. No suspect has been publicly named. The Coca-Romero case is illustrative of a category of homicide that presents particular investigative difficulty, a fast-moving robbery or assault carried out by multiple individuals wearing face coverings in a public commercial setting with a very short window of time in which the crime occurred. The brevity of the encounter, less than 20 seconds according to police, significantly limits the amount of identifying information available to witnesses and to any security systems that may have been present, since even high-quality surveillance footage can capture only limited detail when an incident unfolds this quickly and involves concealed faces. The use of a billboard as an investigative tool reflects a public information strategy sometimes used by law enforcement in cases involving significant unsolved violence in a specific community. Billboards placed along well-traveled routes, such as U.S. Route 1 in this case, are intended to reach a broad cross-section of the local population repeatedly over time, in the hope that sustained visibility will eventually reach someone with relevant information who may not otherwise engage with traditional news coverage. The coordination between Prince William County Police and the FBI's Washington field office in this case reflects the standard practice of involving federal law enforcement resources in cases that meet certain criteria, including the use of firearms in the commission of a crime and the potential for the perpetrators to have crossed jurisdictional lines. Federal involvement often brings additional resources, including forensic laboratory capacity and coordination with FBI reward programs, which can supplement the resources available to a county-level police department. The relatively modest total reward amount in this case, compared to some of the 6-figure rewards seen in other cases in this collection, reflects variation in how reward funds are established and grown over time. Some cases receive significant private or family-funded contributions that substantially increase the total reward, while others remain closer to the standard amounts typically offered through federal or county reward programs. This variation does not necessarily reflect the relative priority assigned to a case by investigators, but it can affect the scale of public engagement a reward is able to generate. As of this recording, the Prince William County Police Department continues to list Coca-Romero's case as open. No arrests have been made, and investigators continue to seek information from the public more than a decade after the shooting occurred. Case 7. Dori Jamison. A woman's ex-boyfriend hadn't heard from her in days. When he went to check on her, what he found turned a welfare check into a homicide investigation. Dori Jamison was 47 years old. She was found deceased on March 2, 2014, inside her trailer at a recreational vehicle park near Leon and Acacia Avenues in Hemet, California. According to police accounts, the Hemet Fire Department responded to a call for medical assistance and found Jamison unresponsive inside her home. Investigators determined that she had died from strangulation. Her ex-boyfriend, who had not been in contact with her for several days, had gone to check on her welfare and asked neighbors to accompany him into the trailer. The Hemet Police Department led the investigation. Detectives learned during the course of their inquiry that Jamison had recently ended a relationship and had begun seeing another man around the time of her death. As of 2026, cold case investigators with the Hemet Police Department publicly renewed their appeal for information in March 2025, as reported by CBS Los Angeles, seeking any details related to the 2014 case. No arrest has been made, and no suspect has been publicly named. The Jamison case reflects a common investigative pattern in homicides involving a victim's recent relationship history. When a victim has recently ended one relationship and begun another, investigators typically examine both relationships as part of a standard victimology assessment, a process in which detectives build a detailed picture of a victim's recent relationships, routines, and any potential conflicts in order to identify possible motives or persons who may have had reason to cause harm. This does not imply that any specific individual connected to Jamison has been identified as a suspect. It reflects standard investigative procedure applied broadly in homicide cases involving personal relationships. The relatively limited amount of publicly available information about this case, compared to several others in this collection, is itself a notable feature. Some cold cases receive extensive, sustained media coverage over many years, generating a large public record of details, theories, and updates. Others, including this one, are documented more sparsely in available reporting, which can reflect a combination of factors: the size of the media market covering the case, the resources of the specific police department involved, and the level of ongoing public interest generated in the years following the crime. The renewed appeal issued by Hemet cold case investigators in March 2025, more than a decade after Jamison's death, reflects a broader practice among police departments of using case anniversaries as opportunities to generate fresh media coverage and, in turn, new tips. Cold case units frequently operate with limited staffing dedicated specifically to older unsolved files, and periodic public appeals are one of the more resource-efficient ways such units can maintain visibility for a case without requiring extensive new investigative work. As of this recording, the Hemet Police Department continues to list Jamison's death among its open cold cases. Investigators have not disclosed additional forensic details publicly, and the case remains unresolved more than 11 years after her death. Case 8. Stephen D. Halton, Jr. A man on his way to work at the Cleveland Clinic was shot near a bus stop before sunrise. More than a decade later, his case remains without an arrest. Stephen D. Halton, Jr. was 30 years old. He was shot at approximately 4:50 a.m. on January 11, 2014, at an address on Lakeshore Boulevard, near a Regional Transit Authority bus stop in Cleveland, Ohio. According to Crime Stoppers of Cuyahoga County, Halton was on his way to work at the Cleveland Clinic at the time he was shot once in the upper body. The Cleveland Division of Police has led the investigation, with Crime Stoppers of Cuyahoga County working to publicize the case to the broader community. A cash reward remains available for information leading to an arrest and formal indictment in the case. As of 2026, this case remains listed as an unsolved homicide by Crime Stoppers of Cuyahoga County. Tips can be submitted to Crime Stoppers by phone or through their website. No suspect has been publicly named. The Halton case is representative of a significant category of unsolved homicides in American cities, shootings that occurred during early morning hours, often involving victims who are simply commuting to work, and which lack an immediately apparent motive such as robbery or personal dispute. These cases can be particularly difficult for investigators because the absence of an obvious connection between victim and any potential perpetrator removes some of the standard starting points detectives typically use to build a suspect pool, such as examining a victim's personal relationships or financial disputes. The role of Crime Stoppers organizations, as seen in this case, is a significant feature of how many mid-sized American cities manage public engagement with unsolved crime. Crime Stoppers programs operate as independent nonprofit organizations that work alongside but separately from police departments, allowing them to offer cash rewards and guarantee anonymity to tipsters in ways that can sometimes encourage individuals who might be otherwise unwilling to speak directly with law enforcement. Cuyahoga County's Crime Stoppers program, which maintains an unsolved homicides database accessible to the public, represents one of many such regional efforts across the country aimed at keeping cold cases visible over long periods of time. The limited public documentation available for this case, relative to several others profiled in this collection, reflects a broader pattern in how homicide cases receive uneven levels of ongoing media attention. Cases involving certain victim profiles, locations, or circumstances sometimes generate substantially more sustained press coverage than others, independent of the underlying facts or the seriousness of the crime itself. This disparity has been the subject of academic and journalistic study in its own right, examining which cases receive prolonged public attention and which do not. As of this recording, the Cleveland Division of Police, in coordination with Crime Stoppers of Cuyahoga County, continues to list Halton's death as an open and unsolved case. No arrest has been made in the more than 12 years since the shooting occurred. Case 9. Nicholas Riley. A second person was in the vehicle and survived. Even with a living witness to the incident, investigators have never identified a suspect. Nicholas Riley was 30 years old. He was found shot inside a vehicle in Wilmington, Delaware, on December 20th, 2014. A second individual who was also inside the vehicle was critically injured but survived. The Riley case illustrates a distinct and somewhat counterintuitive investigative challenge. Even when a case includes a surviving witness who was present for the incident, an arrest does not always follow. Survivors of violent incidents do not always retain clear memories of the event, particularly when they themselves sustained critical injuries, which can affect consciousness, perception, and memory formation at the time of the incident. In some cases, a surviving witness may also be reluctant to cooperate fully with investigators, whether out of fear, personal involvement in circumstances surrounding the incident, or other reasons that are not always disclosed publicly. This case also highlights the broader challenge of researching and verifying cold cases that receive limited coverage from major news outlets. For that reason, any further documentary or investigative work on this case would benefit substantially from direct engagement with the Wilmington Police Department and contemporaneous coverage from Delaware Online and the News Journal. The Wilmington Police Department has not, according to available research for this collection, issued a widely publicized renewed appeal for this case in recent years, in contrast to several of the other cases profiled here, which have received 10th anniversary coverage or dedicated cold case unit attention. This does not necessarily indicate that the case has received less investigative effort internally, but it does reflect a comparative lack of public-facing engagement, at least based on currently available sources. As of this recording, Nicholas Riley's case remains classified as open and unsolved, without a publicly identified suspect or established motive, more than 11 years after the shooting occurred. Case 10, Relisha Rudd and Andrea Tatum. Before we begin this case, an important clarification. The death of an 8-year-old child at the center of this case has never been forensically confirmed. Her remains have never been found. What follows describes what investigators believe occurred, alongside a separate, confirmed homicide directly connected to her disappearance. Relisha Tanau Rudd was 8 years old at the time she was last seen. She lived with her family at the former D.C. General Family Shelter in Washington, D.C. She was last seen on March 1, 2014, captured on hotel surveillance footage in the company of Khalil Tatum, 51, who worked as a janitor at the shelter. Andrea Tatum, also 51, was Khalil Tatum's wife. She was found deceased in a Red Roof Inn room in Prince George's County, Maryland, on March 20, 2014. Her death has been confirmed as a homicide. Relisha Rudd was not reported missing until approximately March 19th or 20th, 2014, nearly 3 weeks after she was last seen. Surveillance footage placed Rudd together with Khalil Tatum at a Holiday Inn Express on February 26th, and again at a Days Inn on New York Avenue on March 1st. Following the discovery of Andrea Tatum's death, a warrant was issued for Khalil Tatum in connection with his wife's homicide. Ballistics evidence connected a firearm to him. On March 31st or April 1st, 2014, Khalil Tatum was found deceased in Kenilworth Park and Aquatic Gardens, from what has been described as an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. The investigation involved the Metropolitan Police Department of Washington, D.C. and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, with the Prince George's County Police Department leading the separate investigation into Andrea Tatum's death. Investigators have stated they believe Khalil Tatum was responsible for Relisha Rudd's death prior to his own death, though her body has never been recovered, and no forensic confirmation of her death exists. As of 2026, Rudd's case remains an open and active investigation under the Metropolitan Police Department and the FBI. The FBI has offered a reward, reported at $25,000, for information leading to the recovery of her remains or further information about her case. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released an age-progressed image of Rudd in 2022. July 11th has been observed in Washington, D.C. as Relisha Rudd Remembrance Day. Tips can be submitted to the Metropolitan Police Department's Command Information Center. No individual has ever been formally charged in connection with Andrea Tatum's murder, since the sole suspect in that case, Khalil Tatum, died before he could be arrested or prosecuted. This case is included in this collection primarily because of its direct connection to a confirmed and still unresolved homicide, the death of Andrea Tatum, and because it remains among the most extensively documented child welfare and missing persons cases in Washington, D.C. from that year. It is presented here with the understanding that Relisha Rudd's death, while believed by investigators to have occurred, has not been established through forensic evidence and should be treated accordingly. The case highlights a specific and difficult category of investigation, instances in which a suspected perpetrator dies before facing legal proceedings, leaving both the immediate case and any connected cases without a path to prosecution or formal legal resolution. In circumstances like this, an investigation may reach a point where investigators are confident in their understanding of what occurred, based on physical evidence such as the ballistics match in Andrea Tatum's case, but the legal system provides no mechanism for a formal conviction once the person believed responsible is no longer living. This leaves cases like Andrea Tatum's technically unresolved in the legal sense, even when law enforcement holds a clear investigative conclusion. The extended timeline between Rudd's last confirmed sighting and the point at which she was reported missing has been a significant point of public and institutional review. It prompted broader examination of protocols at the shelter where her family resided, and of communication between shelter staff, school officials, and child welfare authorities regarding how a child's prolonged absence from school and community oversight went unreported for nearly 3 weeks. This case has since been referenced in discussions of child welfare policy reform in Washington, D.C., regarding oversight of children living in transitional or shelter housing. The continued observance of Relisha Rudd Remembrance Day, along with the FBI's ongoing reward offer, reflects the sustained institutional and public commitment to the case more than a decade after Rudd was last seen. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's release of an age-progressed image in 2022 represents a standard practice used in long-term missing children cases, in which forensic artists use photographs and, where relevant, family facial characteristics to generate an estimate of how a missing child might appear at a later age, in the hope of generating recognition from members of the public. As of this recording, Relisha Rudd's case remains open with the Metropolitan Police Department and the FBI, and Andrea Tatum's homicide remains formally unresolved due to the death of the sole suspect prior to arrest. 10 cases, 10 families still waiting for answers. From Georgia to Washington, D.C., from Omaha to San Francisco, the details differ, but the outcome is the same. No arrests, no convictions, no resolution. A few caveats bear repeating. Relisha Rudd's case is a presumed, not confirmed, homicide. Her remains have never been found. The cases of Stephen Halton and Nicholas Riley carry more limited public documentation than the others, and further verification through primary local reporting is recommended. All reward amounts and case statuses reflect research current at the time of this production. Cold cases can change quickly once new evidence or forensic technology becomes available. Every case here remains officially open. That means the agencies involved, from the Putnam County Sheriff's Office to the FBI's Washington Field Office to the Cleveland Division of Police, continue to accept tips and continue to revisit these files. Cold cases are solved with real regularity by someone who comes forward years later with a single piece of information. If any detail in this program is familiar to you, the agencies listed throughout are asking for your help. Contact information for each case has been provided. If this investigation mattered to you, hit like, drop a comment with your thoughts below, and subscribe to the Predator's Archive so you don't miss the next case file. We'll be back with more. Thank you for watching.